I'm Sushil Mahato from Networkers Home Technical Team, and today I'm going to present Destination NAT and zone-based firewalling on a Checkpoint Firewall. So today's topic is Destination NAT. First of all, we'll see how to get our destination access from the outside. So this is our topology. In this topology, we have a router from the outside, and this host wants to get an access from the WAN zone to your DMZ zone, which is in a private network. Okay, so that's our task. Now, about the theoretical part of the translations, I have already discussed in our previous video. Please go through it if you haven't gone through. In this video, we'll see a practical of a destination NAT. So let me make you understand. Here, the destination IP address is 192.168.30.3. This is my destination IP, which should be accessible from outside. So I need to translate this this DMZ server from the outside network. So let's say, for example, I'll make you understand here. We have a DMZ server with an IP address 192.168.30.3. This is our real server. And this server has to be translated to our, let's say I want to translate it to 172.16.3.30. That's my translated IP. I want to translate it to this IP address. So any source from the outside should get an access from the outside with this IP to our DMZ server IP. So that's basically our task. So to complete this task, you need to follow this topology. Here, I'll get an access from the Smart Console to our SMS server to create a translation. So first of all, I'll create an object for DMZ server, and I'll create an object for the translated IP, and I'll try to access from WAN zone to DMZ server. So that's our task. We'll see how to resolve it. So first of all, I'll try to do a translation on the firewall via a smart console. So let us take the access of the smart console. Now on the smart console, first of all, I'll get into a translation or a NAT section. Here I'll add a rule above, and I'll write a, now here I have to specify who is a source coming from the outside. So in the source, let it be anyone. I don't care about who is coming from outside, because the source can be anyone from the outside getting access to our DMZ server. So let the source be anyone. Now I'll define who is my original destination. So from the outside, whenever I'll initiate the connection, how the traffic looks like, how the flow looks like. So the source from the outside can be anyone, right? So let's say if I'm sending a request, my source can be anyone. So let's say, for example, my current source is 172.16.3.51. That's my real source as of now. You see the outside router, it's a WAN router. You can check the IP here. So IP interface brief. Here I can see this is on my WAN interface IP. It means it's this interface IP. Okay, the WAN host IP who wants to initiate the packet, and he wants to request the packet through a public IP, right? So translated IP, you say. So my translated IP is 172.16.3.30. So this is how the request will be initiated from the outside. So the packet will come from the WAN router to your checkpoint firewall, right? So the packet should get initiated in this way. All right. So this is what we have to define. So come to your rule and you'll define who is the original destination. So original destination will be my translated IP. So I'll define the host and I'll write DMZ TIP, translated IP, and my object IP will be 172.16.3.30. Now, original service can be any. I'm not going to do a service-based translations right now. I'll just do layer 3 to layer 3 translation. Now, translated source, I'm not doing anything related to source translation. I'll go with the destination translation. In a destination translation, I need to configure who should get translated. So I'll define here, I am doing a translation for a DMZ server. So I'll write an IP address 192.168.30.3, my DMZ server IP. I don't have to do anything with the translated services or the service part. Now my policy should get deployed on the checkpoint firewall. All right. So this is how we define the translation rule. Now I'll come to a policy to allow a traffic from the WAN. So I'll write a policy here. I'll give a name. It's between WAN to DMZ. Let the source be anyone, and my destination will be my translated IP through which the users will come from the outside to a DMZ. And here action I'll give as a allow, and I'll give logs, and I want to deploy this policy on the checkpoint firewall. I'll be adding it. I'll say install policy, install policy. Now let the policy get installed. We can track the policy installation. It has to complete 100%. It's about to complete, 50% has completed. Now we can go to our DMZ server meanwhile and enable a debugging of the ICMP to check the output. I would say debug IP ICMP. All right. Now this is my DMZ server. So IP interface brief, you can see IP address 192.168.30.3. I'll minimize it meanwhile. And this policy is about to complete. Okay, installation done. Now I'm going to verify the translation and the access from the outside. So I'll try to get an access from the WAN router. That's my outside router. And I'll try to get an access to our DMZ server. This is my DMZ server. And I'll try to ping through the translated IP 172.16.3.h30. And you see I have a reachability to our destination. So my destination packet is reaching, and your DMZ server is replying back to a guy who had initiated the packet from outside. Now let me make you understand a flow over here. So this was the request which had gone from the source outside router or the WAN router to a checkpoint firewall via translated IP. This packet went to a checkpoint firewall. Now checkpoint firewall looked into a source IP and a destination IP. So it kept the source IP same as it is. There was no changes with the source IP, and a destination IP was a translated IP. So it untranslated back to this real IP. We see this was the translated IP of the real server. So it untranslated back to a real IP. So real IP was 192.168.30.3. And this packet was forwarded from your checkpoint firewall to your DMZ server. Now, server gives you a reply. In a reply, A source will be a DMZ who has received a packet, and destination will be a real IP which was requested from the outside. Now this reply will be gone from your DMZ server to your checkpoint firewall. Now checkpoint firewall looks, it's a reply packet and this is a real source. It has a translated IP. So it will translate it back to a translated IP. And then your destination will remain same. And this packet is finally forwarded from your checkpoint firewall to your WAN router. All right. So a guy who was a source in a source packet has become destination in a reply packet, and a guy who was a destination in the request packet has become source in a reply packet. So this cross connection gets masked, and this is how the flow gets created. All right. So you can see this is how we got an access from the outside. And also we see, according to a flow, your DMZ router should give a reply from a DMZ IP to a IP from the outside. If you match this flow, it will exactly match. Now here, if you see a DMZ router reply, so you see a reply part here, 192.168.30.3, 192.168.30.3, given a reply to 172.16.3.51, 172.16.3.51. So this is how our destination NAT works. Now we'll see another lab, that's our zone-based forwarding. Before I look into a zone-based firewalling, we can view the logs. You can click on this particular rule and we can see this log getting generated. Here I can see the source IP from the outside, and I can see a destination as a translated IP. We are sending the ICMP request, and we see the translation was done for this particular host, which was accessible at the DMZ, right? And you see the master rule. So it was WAN to DMZ rule which was used. So this is how you see the details of a translation. Now we'll see a practical of zone-based firewalling. So zone-based firewalling is the way to segregate the communication between the zones. So till now, the policies what we had defined on the firewalls wasn't a zone-based. Okay, so it was like policy-based firewalling. By default, your checkpoint firewall does the policy-based firewalling. Let's say, for example, if I want to define a policy between LAN to any destination, so let's say if I don't do a zone-based firewalling, then what exactly happens? Let me show you. If I want to come, let's say I'll define a policy. I want to define a rule here, and the rule name is from LAN. Okay. The rule name is a LAN to any. Okay. So what do I see here? Source is anyone and destination is anyone. All right. So now the packet will pass from the any source to any destination. I'll add it in a checkpoint firewall. All right. And you see, we have given any source, any destination as a LAN to any. Just I want from LAN to any, right? So I can add a LAN subnet. Okay, let me add a LAN subnet. So I'll say LAN subnet as a 10.11.11.0 with a subnet mask 24. All right. So this is my LAN subnet. Okay. This particular subnet to any destination, I'll have the connectivity. So let me just install this policy. And we can see this policy has been successfully implemented. So right now, if I go to a LAN PC, so if I come to this LAN PC and ping this WAN router, or if I try to ping this DMZ server, I should be able to ping. You should have a reachability. You should have a routing part properly configured. So when I come to a LAN PC, when I try to ping 172.16.3.7, sorry, 51, you see I have a reachability. And here, if I try to ping 170, sorry, 192.168.30.3, see, we have a reachability to both the zones. Now you can convert those communications based on the zones as well. Now we can come to a gateway, and inside the checkpoint firewall, we'll go to edit section. And here we'll come to a management interface, sorry, network management, and we'll come to each and every interfaces. So here I'll modify them and put them in a specific zone. I'll define a user defined zone. So I'll make it as an internal zone, right? You can see a zone is specified over here. I'll go to edit and I'll specify a WAN zone. This will be my external zone. So you see external zone defined here. And here, if I go and define it as a DMZ, so I'll go with the user defined and as a DMZ zone. So now your firewall will act like a zone-based firewall. Okay, depends on the policy how you want to define. So let's come to a policy. And now here, instead of a subnet, if I want to remove this subnet, and if I want to add, I want to get an access from the LAN, sorry, LAN zone. You can add a LAN zone here. So you can say like internal zone to a DMZ zone. Let's say you want to get an access to a DMZ zone itself. So let's say DMZ zone, source and destination. Now I want to do a filtering based on these zones. I'll install the policy and publish it. And I'll install the policy on the firewall. Now let this policy get deployed. Once the policy gets deployed 100%, after that we'll try to communicate from LAN to DMZ. After the policy deployment, we'll try to communicate from LAN to DMZ. It won't communicate to WAN. It will be restricting a communication between LAN and DMZ. Sorry, it will be restricting the communication between other zones and allowing the traffic only between LAN and DMZ. So let's see our policy. So policy is still deploying, almost getting deployed. Perfect. So we'll come to a LAN PC. We'll try to ping DMZ. We see we have the connectivity. And if we try to reach the outside or the WAN router, we see we don't have a reachability. So this is like zone-based traffic. controlling on your checkpoint firewall. I'll see you guys in our next video with the new topics. Till then, thanks.